Alpha Nerd Entertainment.
What is going on, everybody? Steve here from Alpha Nerd Entertainment, and today we are coming at you with a hot take video. That's right, we are looking to get a spark, a rise, and a reaction out of you gamers in the community. That is absolutely right. We got 5 hot takes that I hope will get a reaction and rise out of you. But you know the drill. First, be sure to hit that like button and be sure to subscribe. Sit back and let's get ready to talk about some hot takes you may or may not enjoy. What is going on, everybody? Now that I'm done acting like a generic annoying asshole, let's just keep it real and talk about the first topic and the number 1 hot take, which is, what is better, Metal Slug or Contra? Comparing the Metal Slug franchise and series versus the Contra series. Both are fantastic. Let's get one thing out of the way and let me make one thing crystal clear. Both of these franchises are phenomenal, without question. But one is better. And which one is that? I'm here to tell you that after playing a whole bunch from both parties, that the Metal Slug series absolutely takes a fucking huge, steaming shit all over the Contra series. And why is that? Well, one, we gotta look back at the original Contra and Super C, 2 legendary classics, 2 phenomenal games that live up to the legend status that is behind them. They're both excellent games, but they are primitive in comparison to Metal Slug 1 and 2. Graphically, the audio, the music, the controls, the variety in the levels all fail in comparison to both Metal Slug 1 and Metal Slug 2. Now, in my opinion, the best Contra game is Contra Hardcore. It's absolutely superb for the Sega Genesis, and I could care less about the Super Nintendo's Alien Wars. It is a good game. I do love the theme and the premise of that game, but it's really just not all that fun to play. It's harder than it needs to be, and it's hard for all the wrong reasons. Many people who have listened to any of my No Death Runs will hear me talk about there is good hard and there is bad hard. And well, Alien Wars is kind of bad hard, where hardcore, Contra Hardcore, is good hard. Contra Hardcore definitely is the shining gem in these Contra games, and I'm going to exclude things like Contra Shattered Soldier and anything else 3D elemented. We're talking about the 2D shooters. Who are the king of shooters? And it's Metal Slug. Metal Slug's whole theme of World War I and World War II, the premise, the graphics, the sound, the controls, the weapons, just the overall environment of Metal Slug really does take a shit all over Contra. There is really just no comparing the Contra series to Metal Slug. Metal Slug is completely superior in a league of its own. We're talking about 2 champions, but we're talking like Jordan era versus LeBron. And now a lot of people these days are saying who's better, LeBron James or Michael Jordan. But anyone who doesn't say Michael Jordan can get fucked. And in this case, LeBron James is amazing, and so is Contra. But Metal Slug and Jordan are just simply a whole lot better. And I'm sure that's going to trigger a bunch of you, but until you sit down and play some of these games, like even Game Boy Advance's Metal Slug Advance, Metal Slug X, Metal Slug 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, until you play through those, I think you will then decide for yourself which game is more fun. Now, unfortunately, most of those being arcade games, you do have the easy premise of getting through them, but you can pick up Metal Slug 5 for PlayStation 2, and it's going to play on a little bit different than the arcade, making you kind of have to backtrack when you do run out of men, facing some game overs just like the Game Boy Advance version. So, yeah, with that being said, sorry folks, but Metal Slug wins that battle every day of the week, and unless you've played both franchises, you don't have a say in the matter. And I do. And what's right is Metal Slug is the winner of 2 kings. Let me take a sip of my coffee here before we dive into the next hot take. Now, the next one I don't think is going to be quite as controversial as the first, but I'm here to point out something that just seems completely apparent and obvious. And that's the Play Choice 10 is absolutely garbage. It is among the stupidest things I've ever heard of. First off, The whole idea of going to an arcade back in the 80s and 90s was to play games that were not just visually, but audio superior to what you had at home. The whole excitement and joy in rushing off to the arcade were to play games that your systems could never dream of playing. Just graphically superior, smoother, and faster processors making games run at speeds you could only dream of. There was very little slowdown in the arcade. And well, having a Play Choice 10 and playing Nintendo games, standing up, I can't even say it without laughing, it's retarded. I wouldn't want to play Sega Genesis in an arcade cabinet. And everyone knows how much I love the Sega Genesis. I wouldn't want to play PlayStation 1 in an arcade cabinet. I wouldn't want to play Super Nintendo in an arcade cabinet. And I sure as hell don't want to play 10 NES games in an arcade cabinet. The only console I could justify playing in an arcade cabinet would be the Dreamcast, because the Dreamcast was essentially an arcade console brought home. So the absolute buffoonery of the Play Choice 10 is the most laughable thing in the world. You know, there's a reason my local arcades don't have a Play Choice 10. Because who in their right mind would get thrilled and want to pump quarters into a machine that they can play games at home? It's absolutely ridiculous. And NES games are meant to be played sitting down in front of a television with that fantastic little controller that is just oh so perfect for their games. And while being seated. Just standing up and playing NES games is just beyond laughable to me. And again, the biggest fault here is you're playing regular games you can play at home on a standing arcade machine. It's retarded. It's so stupid. The whole idea of going to the arcades ever in the arcade existence, whether it was from like 1980 to like 2004, the whole idea was to play games that were graphically superior than what you could have at home. And it wasn't until the PlayStation 2 and Xbox came out, and I suppose the GameCube, that kind of put the arcade a thing of the past, making it obsolete, because we now then had things at home were more powerful, giving us no reason to rush off to the arcade. But let me tell you, back in the 80s and early 90s, the arcade had a graphical advantage, rendering the Play Choice 10 an absolute ridiculous, pointless purchase. Hot take 3. The Nintendo Entertainment System, do I dare say it, is overrated. Let me tell you, there are some really cool cars that came out in the 80s. Particular comes to mind the Toyota MR2, the Buick Grand National. There was definitely some awesome cars from the 80s, but, well, they would fall in comparison to many of the 90s models and late 90s models, especially fail in comparison to cars made today, or even 10 years ago. Now, I know there are very different things comparing cars from different generations to video games from different generations, but I think it's time you all just kind of man up, look in the mirror, acknowledge yourself as a grown adult, and start to separate yourself from that nostalgia blindness. The NES is overrated. I'm going to say that one more time for you and let that really sink in, because it's the truth. If you think otherwise, that's great, but you would be wrong. The NES is overrated. You're addicted to seeing graphics that you saw as a child for the first time, feeling those joyful buzzes and glows and buzz that just triggered in the whatever they call it, the serotonin in your little child mind, seeing those games for the first time and just sparking your love for gaming. You need to separate yourself from that like an adult and see the Nintendo for what it really is. A very mediocre system. I've been saying for fucking decades now that the Super Nintendo is a better console than the NES. I think it goes without saying that the Genesis is clearly superior. And so is the PlayStation 1. And let's talk about some of the games that are on the NES that just aren't all that good. Like its shooters. Silver Surfer? Light Force? Have you played Batsugan? Have you played Dodon Panchi or Strikers 1945? Have you played any shooters from PlayStation 1, Saturn, or the arcade? Have you played Gunbird 1 and 2 for the Dreamcast? These are so obviously better, it's laughable. Think of a Ferrari F40 and compare that to a 1960s Ferrari. It's a sure vintage, nice looking Ferrari from the 60s, but it's essentially a hunk of shit in comparison to the Ferrari F40 or Ferrari F50. Well, Gunbird and Striker's 1945-3 are the Ferrari F50. And well, that makes Life Force and Silver Surfer and Gunsmoke, you know, that old, whatchamacallit, Lamborghini Countach from the 70s. It's stiff, it's clunky, it's slow, and it doesn't play all that good. How about the fact that both DuckTales 1 and DuckTales 2 fucking suck? I think there's going to be a lot of people who actually agree with me on that. Many people who don't, but I'm telling you, DuckTales sucks. Its music is ear-piercingly annoying, and the pogo stick mechanic is atrocious. And the list goes on and on. Games, not even Konami hit gold every single time. First off, the Turtles game, I love the music. It's a bad game. To like that game, you're forcing yourself to like it. And you forced yourself to beat it, therefore it's hard, and you've developed some sense of accomplishment, and you convinced yourself that that game is good. Well, you've convinced yourself that a bad game is good. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the first game, is not a good game. Its music is awesome. The game is poor. Jackal, Bayou Billy, suck. Jackal is like a poor man's Contra, or a poor man's Mercs in a Jeep. Jackal sucks. It's just not very good. It doesn't suck, it's just, it's mid. It's mid. It's mid gaming. And you got to evolve past the NES. I think far too many people got caught up in the angry video game nerd, sparking the nostalgia for the NES and having fun with it, and like sparked a huge rise in collecting. And it just caused a lot of people to really then think back to the era of the NES, and it just resonated them with this permanent glow that will never fade. The NES is great. I'm not here to say the NES is bad. It's excellent. It's one of the best systems ever made. But it's behind PlayStation 1, it's behind Super Nintendo, it's behind PS2, behind the Sega Genesis, and it probably falls somewhere right after that. Now again, it's all subjective, and you could think otherwise, and you might be right, but you're probably wrong. The NES is full of garbage games that play poorly, look poorly, are harder than they need to be for all the wrong reasons, and its shooters are hot trash. Hot trash. Even Turtles, the arcade game, and Manhattan Project are far too long and boring. Like, after 4 levels of both those games, do you really want to keep playing them? They lack moves, they lack variety in enemies, and it's just the most monotonous, repetitive thing you could ever play. Why do you think Streets of Rage series is so sought after? Because that's what we got shortly after on the Genesis. We went from the best beat-em-ups being Double Dragon and fucking Turtles Arcade and Manhattan Project to Streets of Rage 1 and 2. There was a big leap in quality there. It's kind of why Streets of Rage 2 is so highly regarded, because it was such a fucking slam dunk over those boring, crappy, repetitive games. I'm going to end it right there. Jackal sucks. Bayou Billy sucks. Not all Konami is gold, though I love Konami. They are fantastic, and they are better than Capcom from back in the day, without question. But the NES, horribly overrated. Horribly overrated. It's like a hot girl who's bad in bed. She might be good to look at, but her performance is slow and sluggish and kind of forgettable. The NES, you're overrating it. I think it's time you up your game and play some other things. Hot take number 4. Mario 64 is way better than Super Mario World and did more for gaming than Super Mario World could ever dream of. Let's face it, Mario 1 is an iconic classic that changed gaming forever. It more or less introduced side-scrolling for the first time. Before that, we were playing Commodore 64 and Atari with games that were on still screens that would either, when you move past them, it would pause and blink up a new screen. There was no scrolling. Mario essentially introduced that and revolutionized it. Mario 1 has its place in gaming history. Mario 3 revolutionized this with phenomenal graphics for its time and creative level design, giving Mario all new powers and being the biggest juggernaut you can ever imagine. Most people I know and have spoken to consider Mario 3 better than Super Mario World. Now, admittedly, I only beat Super Mario World for the first time in 2013. I did it without nostalgia. I played a lot of it as a kid at friends' houses, of course, but I never got to sink my teeth in and play and beat it. So when I played it in 2014, I was excited to play it, and I played it with like, hey, I finally get to complete this game, the game that I played the first 30% of at every friend's house. And if they were far in the game, they would never dare let me play it then because they didn't want me to accidentally beat a level that they were struggling with. And I understand that. They needed that victory themselves. But when I played and beat it for the first time in 2013, I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. I thought it was very good. But I didn't think it was all that great. I just was left a bit disappointed because I'm like, well, Mario 3 is clearly better than this. I'm like, Mario 3 is clearly better than this game. And I was like, that's a bit disappointing. All these years, all this build-up, all this hype, and it didn't deliver. Well, beating Mario 64 for the first time in 2023 lived up to the hype. There's a reason it's the most popular game on speedruns.com. It's a fantastic game. Now, personally, I don't think it's a speedrun-friendly game, but there's a whole bunch of other people who disagree with that, and they love it. And I'm telling you, Mario 64 is hands down better than Mario World. It actually did something. It's essentially the first 3D game ever. Doom doesn't count because it's not a platform game. It's not an open world game where you can explore in every nook and cranny. They were relatively linear levels. Doom's fantastic, and Doom is 3D. But the first true 3D platform game ever created was Mario 64. And it owns that, and it changed the gaming world in 1996. Pretty sure it was 96. And it's iconic, and it's excellent. And I played it with zero nostalgia, and I'm telling you, it is absolutely better than Super Mario World. And anyone who says something like, oh, if you play it for 30 or 40 stars just to reach Bowser, has never even beat it. Anyone who beats that game is going to know it takes 60 to 80 stars to reach Bowser. Saying 30 and 40 is barely scratching the surface. Hell, 40 is slightly over halfway to that goal. And it's like, I don't know how anyone could have a memory so vacant and empty to not acknowledge that you need more than obviously 30 or 40 stars. That's astounding to me. That is just laughable. That's just yet another lie from a person of pathological lies. You need 70 stars. If you accidentally said, oh, I think you need 60, it's been a while since I played it, you would have enough sense to realize that it's well over 50. Saying 30 and 40, you haven't even touched the game. So don't ever judge a game unless you've played and beat it. Now let me tell you, I have 72 stars, I have a huge backlog. And I tell you, the next 28 will be fun. I'm sure the next 20 after that will be tedious and hard and annoying. I'm not saying the game is perfect. It's not. Mario 64 is flawed in many areas, but the more I played it, the better I got at it, the better I adapted to its controls, and the more I understood the game as well, and I just accelerated my own skill as I played, as I do in any game. And Mario World is absolutely excellent, but it's not as good as Mario 3, and it's not as good as Mario 64. That is hot take number 4. Mario 64 takes a dump all over Mario World all day. Hot take number 5, and I'm excited for this one because many of you probably won't even really know, because you may have not taken the time to play Sonic All-Stars Racing Transformed versus Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is excellent. It's a great game. There's a reason they made Deluxe, because Mario Kart 8 wasn't good enough. Because Sonic All-Stars Racing Transformed came along and gave flying levels and water levels and transitions during the level. And Mario Kart 8 saw that and was like, damn, we gotta up our game. So they started introducing some of that themselves. And well, didn't do it as good. And well, like any Sega game, and very important to racing, mind you, Sonic All-Stars Racing Transformed plays so much faster. So much faster. So much so that here's a good example. When me and my girlfriend played and beat Sonic All-Stars Racing Transformed, a couple months later she went back and played some Mario Kart 8 and she said to me, I couldn't really enjoy it. It felt so slow. I was like, well, yeah, it's a Nintendo game. They're notorious for being slow. Because, you know, they gotta make the hand-eye coordination reflexes for, you know, children, right? You know, Sega's always like to appeal to an older audience. Sonic might be a child's character, but I don't know. You get to play as Joe Musashi, Shinobi, in there, so he's a little more adult-oriented, as is Gilius Thunderhead from Golden Axe. It's also really cool to play as him. And, well, Robotnik, and I don't know, if you've just never played Sonic All-Stars Racing Transform, I challenge you. I challenge you to go and play and beat the campaign. It has a campaign. Let's talk about that first off. The campaign is fucking awesome. Let alone playing the Grand Prix and getting first place like you would in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Cool. Awesome. Standard. What does Mario Kart 8 Deluxe offer outside of that? Well, Sonic All-Stars Racing Transform has a whole story mode where you do all these variety of challenges and, well, racing, and it's just this whole other... It's like, you ever played Soul Calibur for the Dreamcast? And it has that whole quest mission, and it just creates so much more depth to the game than just versus fighting. That's exactly what Sonic All-Stars Racing Transform did in their story mode. I challenge you to play that, beat that, play it with your friends, and let me know after sinking, say, 10 hours. Oh, and you'll play more than 10 hours. You'll play more than 10 hours because you'll be hooked. And you'll say in these comments right here that, yeah, I took the time to play some Sonic All-Stars Racing Transform, and it is way better than Mario Kart Deluxe. And don't get it confused with Sonic Team Racing. Good, not All-Stars Transform. Different games. One is perfect, the other is okay. Mario Kart Deluxe 8 is definitely better than Sonic Team Racing, but it's not better than Sonic All-Star Racing Transform. Those are my hot takes. I hope you're steaming with smoke out of your ears right now. Jackal sucks. Play Choice 10 is pointless. And Mario 64 is better than Super Mario World. Metal Slug takes a slam dunk all over the Konami series. And yes, Sonic All-Stars Racing Transform is better than Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. And if you think otherwise, you're entitled to that opinion, and I hope you enjoy the games you like. Until next time, I'm Steve from Alpha Nerd Entertainment, saying, DX suck it!